Okay, if you are a US tax pro, right now you are in peak, how do I make sure this never happens to me again mode. But in a month's time, you're gonna be like, you know, that wasn't that bad. But here's the problem, 12 months from now, when you're up here again, you're gonna be like, how did I just do this to myself again? I know I've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. Frankly, I own the entire apparel store. So right now, you gotta capture all that stuff. That stuff that's driving you nuts, it'll drive you twice as nuts next year, unless you capture it and do something about it. So let's build a little list together. I'm gonna give you 8 ways to ensure that you never have a tax season like this again. First, you gotta reduce the seasonality of your business. And this kind of goes without saying. It's the age-old accounting firm problem. Whether you do tax or accounting or anything else, your workflow is one of these. Okay, well, I do tax. Are you familiar with how tax works? There's a year and then you file at a specific time. Kind of goes without saying, I know, but here's some ideas for how to reduce that seasonality. Tax planning. More of it, specifically either making it mandatory for your clients or at least mandatory for a subset of your clients who require a bunch of work in your busiest season. Now, it's never been easier for us to be selective. There's an abundance of people that want to work with you. Just remember, you get to set the rules for who you're going to work with and who you're not going to work with. And if mandating tax planning is the answer to taking the pressure off of busy season, do it. Another thing you can do is make any sort of cleanup work, like fixing the books, that sort of thing, a pre-year end project. So if they normally bring you a pile of bank statements in March and say, go do my tax return, don't do that. That's just bad. Those types of people, you wanna do that stuff before year end. So you're at the very least doing the bulk of the heavy lifting and answering the problematic questions before you get to the busiest time of the year. Now, how about moving your firm to prescribed delivery dates? Every client on the list has a date range where they gotta get their stuff in and a date range where it's gotta go out. I did a whole video on this. I think you need to think about it. To me, it's the only way to totally solve for this problem. And last, think about whether you even want to take on new clients that will make you file during tax season. Your current clients have these expectations and inertia in a certain direction, but the new clients that come in, they don't know any of that. You can create this whole reality for them that's totally different than what all the current people are doing. So if you put on your website, hey, every new client goes on extension, then you're at least keeping tax season from getting any worse, right? Okay, second, build out your info requests ahead of time. So what most tax practices do is we've got these pretty crappy organizers that run out of the tax software and we send those out. And that's kind of just like a real low effort. Here's the stuff that I probably need. It's better than nothing, but far from a complete list. And then what we do is in the heat of tax season, the client gives us all that stuff. And then we go through and we say, okay, no, here's all the stuff we actually need. Thanks for using that organizer for reference, but I actually need a whole bunch more stuff. And we're building these lists at our busiest time. Think of the number of clients that you do this for. When I think the better move is to build those lists before the end of the year. Seems like that's gonna take a lot of time. Yeah, I will. That seems like time I might not get paid for. Here's the thing, right now, is until you've smoothed out your workflow, that time, that non-peak time, for most of us, that's a sunk cost. That's somebody spinning in their chair. And in a tax practice, if you run a team, oftentimes it's hard to keep the junior people busy in the slow times of the year. So this is a great task for entry-level folks to contribute in a way that will take work out of tax season. Because genuinely, any amount of time you can trade in your slow time to get a minute back in your busy time is found time. Now, this isn't the kind of thing you gotta do across your whole client base. You can trial it with a subset of your client base, but better pre-built request lists will save you time and will actually enable a better client experience. Now, something that goes hand in hand with that, oh baby, let the robots do the follow-ups. This may be the greatest upside of having clear request lists. You know how much time we spend collectively. Think about this. Think about your whole practice and all of the following up that happens with every single client throughout the entire year. Just think about how much waste that is. Not only the sending of the messages, but the what are the things I actually need, and then you send the message. This is where biggest paradigm shift that I think is a huge opportunity for most of us. Let the machines do the requesting of the things and the machines do the follow-ups. So if you've got a really clear list of things you need from the client and you can plug that into your practice management system or whatever you're using for client requests, you want that thing to follow up every week, every couple weeks, whatever schedule you land on. And that is like something that is otherwise taking somebody a ton of time to do. And the reality is they're probably not doing a very good job of it because we do it a couple of times and then it gets real uncomfortable and we stop. Here's the thing, robots aren't awkward like that. They'll keep poking them until the end of time. And so it not only saves you the time of having to do the follow-ups, it's actually probably gonna get that info in sooner, which is probably a good thing. Next, buddy, if you're running a team, I think most of us right now need to diversify our staffing. We are too tied down to the traditional hiring model, so that when a person leaves, it is the end of the world. Whether you're a small firm, whether a big firm, the single biggest stressor for firm running is somebody leaving unexpectedly. And you could be the best employer in the world. Oftentimes they're gonna leave and it's got absolutely nothing to do with you. It's life circumstances, that stuff's just going to happen. So if you are a 3-person firm and 1 person leaves in January, holy shit, buckle up. If you're a 40-person firm and you lose a few people before tax season, it's still a big time problem. Actually, the most recent roast video we did was all about this. Some staff left in January, and we kind of put together a plan for how do you actually mitigate your staffing and take away the biggest stressor in firm running. Spoiler alert, it's spreading out your staffing across traditional hiring, contractors, but also contract groups. Services where you are buying not the time of people, but you're buying completed tax returns. You're buying tax return reviews. You're buying month-end closes. But the bigger picture idea is you're spreading out how the work gets done across multiple solutions so that you're not 100% into any one of those things. Because if something happens to a staff person, God forbid if you get sick, what's gonna happen to your business? You gotta have a plan, you gotta have a way to shift work around in a pinch. And gang, on the other side of that, to not have that looming stress over you completely changes the mindset and the sustainability of being able to do this stuff without losing your mind. All right, next up, this was the biggest thing that I ever did. Find your peer group. So more so than internet think boys and consultants and all of that, I have perpetually learned more from a room of people who run firms similar to mine than anything else. Running a firm can be an extremely, even if you don't run, like being a leader in a firm can be an extremely isolating thing because nobody else in your life knows exactly what goes into that, the emotions of managing client expectations, and just all the things that go into firm running. But when you sit down with another person that runs a firm similar to yours, oh my gosh, that is such a good feeling. And the first time I sat in a room with a bunch of like high context, very similar firm runners, I was like, it was the most energizing thing I had ever experienced. I could steal ideas. I could say, hey, have you tried this or that? And one person did a couple years ago and they're like, whoa, steer clear of that, buddy. Or this other person may be able to validate something that you're considering. There's so much value in that vulnerability and having that space. That was a game changer for me. Now, big communities, I love. They're valuable. Stuff like Twitter, LinkedIn, that sort of thing. You can get a ton of value there, but the more contextual it can get, the better. It's hard to be vulnerable and there's just a lot of things that aren't gonna translate on a bigger platform like that. So find that space. There's a bunch of communities out there. I run one, it's called Realize, and this is one of the things we do. Actually, at the end of April, we're kicking off a 6-month mastermind series. Everybody in the community who signs up, they get match made with people who run very similar firms to them, who are at kind of a similar stage, similar goals for the next couple of quarters. You got a group of 5 people, you meet for a couple hours once a month, and it is time to just sit there and talk about yourself and what's working and what's not working. And that is so valuable. You've got a conscientious group of people who have a really intimate understanding of what is hard about what you do. And that was the single most beneficial thing I ever did in firm running. It's the entire reason I created the community was to enable a space like that for more people. Now there's a bunch of different versions of that out there. Just find one that works for you. Because when I come home and my wife's like, you're doing a great job. You're so good at this stuff. I'm like, I know what you're trying to do here and make me feel better, but do you actually know that I know what I'm doing? When your daughter brings that picture down to you and you got like the big biceps and you're the superhero and you're like, yeah, kid, I don't know that you actually know. Oh, hey, sweetie. Oh. Oh, that's gonna be a cleanup project. Okay. Peer groups absolutely changed my life. Check them out. Okay, next, let's talk. Whoa. Oh, not again. Oh, well, you know what you can't handle during busy season? Is your stuff breaking, right? Hey, that's why this week's sponsor is Tech Guru, the IT company that understands what it's like to go through busy season, the importance of all that. They understand why you need to have a plan before tax season so that stuff doesn't happen. You just can't afford downtime, right, virtual office? So they're gonna help you with strategy, which most of us just don't have. We just go from breaking one thing to the next thing. But Tech Guru will run you through what they call their accounting technology transformation process. Sounds legit, right? And you'll notice a lot of nice sounding things here. I do need a long-term strategy. Modern apps and a tax practice? Is that even possible? But what I really like here, look! It's busy season. Their cadence actually works with your cadence. From making a plan pre-busy season, to debriefing post-busy season, to revisiting the plan in the summer when you have nothing else to do, when you're doing those projects that were supposed to be done by the 15th, when you're taking that vacation you promised your partner. It's why you need a tech partner that actually understands accountancy, little snowflakes, that knows the ins and outs of that dumpy software you have to use because you prepare tax returns. You don't have any other choice. I'm just joking. Not joking. As I shared, Tech Guru's the IT group that I went to last year. If you need help, check them out. Check out the link in the, there's a link down there. Okay, next, gatekeeping first, workflow second. Let me explain. So online, I like to really hit you in the feels with some of the stuff I post. Like, the reason you're too busy is because you let too much stuff in the door, which is a little dramatic, but it's usually true. But anytime I post something like that, the discussion oftentimes goes to, we just gotta get that workflow nailed in. We gotta get that nailed down this year, and next year's gonna be much better. And originally I was like, yeah, okay. But now I see it a lot. And it kind of begs the question, why are you taking in work based on some hypothetical yet unachieved future level of output, right? If the reason you were over capacity today was workflow issues and things not being as dialed in as they could be, why did you not then only take in work according to today's level of output, and instead it was based on, right? And here's what I think part of the problem is gatekeeping with clients is a human, squishy, emotional thing. It means saying no. It means letting some people down. It may mean firing a client. But what we do enjoy talking about, workflow. That doesn't hurt anybody's feelings, right? And so we can oftentimes be lured into, automation and whatever the cool new workflow thing online is, because that's a little easier for our kind of anti-conflict accountant minds. It's a whole lot more fun than those hard conversations. But ultimately, what you let in the door and what you push out the door, that's what's gonna dictate, can you get the work done? It starts and stops with you. It took me years to be willing to take the level of ownership to say, yep, nope, that was my bad. And I think a lot of us are still stuck on that. Okay, next, stick to your guns. Okay? A lot of firms now are getting better about setting expectations for clients. When you gotta have stuff in to get the thing out within a certain number of days. Maybe everybody has a scheduled time window. Maybe you've just got a cutoff for when things need to be in by the tax deadline. But you know what every client also thinks? Yeah, I saw that email, but come on, I'm Steve. That doesn't apply to me, right? And you know what you usually do? You go, yeah, you are Steve. Straight to the front of the line. I'll get it done for you anyways. We make rules and then oftentimes immediately break those rules. I'm running a daily show that is in like a more intimate format like this. And I ran some polls online of if the tax return is done early, or if they gave you the info after the cutoff, but you got it done, would you still deliver it? And 2/3 of people said, well, yeah, of course, like, why play games? It's done, right? But then 1/3 of people were like, bro, boundaries. They're gonna do the same thing next year. They're gonna think that's the norm. So what's the right answer? It's a sticky one. We did like a whole 20-minute daily show on it. And it's a fun conversation, a good thing to think about. But I do think what we don't do enough of is stick to our guns to protect our own boundaries. Doesn't mean there won't inevitably be some exceptions, and that's okay. It's a spectrum, but we're not usually on the gun sticking end of the spectrum. We're usually somewhere more over here. Okay, last, let's talk capacity planning. I know, you feel guilty, right? Because you don't capacity plan. You're working off the old, it feels like we're gonna need another person in about 3 months sort of thing. That's not helpful. Or, I just haven't found the right tool for doing capacity planning. I got this new practice management system and it just doesn't do it the way I like it. Listen, all these excuses, it's just procrastination because you're not ready to spend the time it takes to do capacity planning. Chuck that crap in Excel. It isn't hard. You know the projects that you do every year, but if you're like me, you overthink it all and you poke holes in it and you think, well, it's not gonna handle this or that well, or there's this or that issue. You know what? As with all things, a crappy version of a plan is better than no plan. And in order to get to a good plan, you first gotta make a bunch of crappy plans. Even to know what good capacity planning looks like for your firm, even to know what you would need from a tool that would do it well for you, there's first like an element of self-discovery where you gotta go through the process of like hacking that out and looking at like what is the right version of this for how we work. Are you a big team? Are you a small team? Do you track time? Do you not track time? Do you do a bunch of different types of stuff? Do you do a whole bunch of a very specific thing? All those will impact the right way to do capacity planning. And the reason you're not doing it is because you just haven't committed the time to doing it. And the only way to run an accounting practice of any type these days is to have a plan, is to minimize volatility and build a plan to mitigate urgency. And you already know that. Don't act like you don't. You just haven't taken the time to do it. So I think everybody needs to start by just chucking that stuff in Excel. That is step one. You will get to more fancy versions down the road. Now, a few sort of sneaky sources of lost capacity. One, new clients. Kind of a duh, but a lot of y'all are growing super fast. If you grew 50% last year, have you actually built 50% of growth in this year? Is that a good idea? Do you even know how much you want to grow? That's something that you should have a number for. They can say, hey, this year we're targeting 30%. And if 50% is out there to be had, do you really want to do that? Probably not, because you probably don't have a staffing plan and all that to be able to get there. But be more intentional about how much new stuff you'll take in. And remember, there will almost always be more available than you're expecting. Second, lots of staff. Like, here's the reality is, beyond a certain threshold, you can pretty much always plan to lose people. That's just life. And it doesn't matter how good of an employer you are. This all goes back to the diversifying your staffing, is to have a really clear plan. If somebody in this role leaves, what happens right away? If somebody in that role leaves, what happens the next day? You need a plan for all those things. If you get sick, what happens? The vast majority of us right now are one key person away from being totally hosed. And it shouldn't be that way. It's work for it to not be that way, but don't expose yourself and the well-being of the business to something like that that's completely outside your control. Now, last, the third big kind of sneaky stealer of output, most of your clients, they're growing. We don't think about what this is gonna entail every year. Here's a clip. I did a whole show talking about this on my daily show.
This was a huge source of not always revenue growth, but growth in the amount of work that we had to do. So like my client base may grow on average top line 20% year over year. And if that ought to equate to a 10% growth in, our fees across a team of 40 people, like that's 10% growth. Like, what is that? Another 4 people then?
Now, tax people, bless your heart. You are almost there. The very best part of tax is that feeling after the deadline. It is a drug unlike anything else. I don't know if it's a healthy drug, but you're about to get that dopamine rush. Oh, enjoy it and take care of yourself. Make sure this is something you can do sustainably. Now, firm running for me was a super isolating thing. I've shared a few ways I mitigated that. This is why I started this new daily show. I am trying to be the friend that I needed when my firm running was at its most isolating. Somebody who's there with some positivity, a few fresh ideas, with a pretty cool collection of people hanging out there every day to boot. I'll link that new channel here somewhere. If that's helpful for you. Good job, you made it. We got to the end of another one. Another tax deadline, not another video. Did that just sound? I mean the tax deadline.